North, North Manchester 106.6.
You're listening to Hannah's Bookshelf.
It's Saturday, the 14th of March, just gone 6 minutes past 2, and you are listening to Hannah's Bookshelf here on North Manchester FM through till 4 p.m. today. And I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, because today's guest is someone who's been a regular contributor to Hannah's Bookshelf for ages now, but we've never actually had a conversation. Not a proper one. We've talked, we've heard him on the show every month talking about books, but me and him haven't been able to sit down and have a proper chat about his work. I'm really pleased to be welcoming to Hannah's Bookshelf, Kevin McGeary. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for actually sitting, because it always feels like I just make you tell me about books that you've read instead of like us being able to have a proper chat. So I'm going to just give Kevin a quick introduction. He's a musician, a storyteller, an essay writer, and a reviewer. And you've heard his reviews on What Are You Reading for a while now. It's over a year, isn't it, that you've been contributing?
Yeah, it's over 2 years now.
Is it over 2 years? Oh, time flies. He also performs as the Kev, as a musical comedian. I think that's the right title, isn't it? Musical comedian.
Yeah, that's where my creative journey's taken me.
It is, and it's where our conversation's going to start, really, because the big news this year, as you mentioned briefly last week, actually, on What Are You Reading, is that you are soon to be a Fringe performer. Kevin's going to be taking a show called Are Musical Comedians a Chinese PSYOP? To both the Edinburgh Fringe and, perhaps more importantly for us here at North Manchester FM, the Greater Manchester Fringe as well. Kevin, can we start there? Can we start with the show, the Fringe show that you're preparing, and also the Kev as well, your musical comedy act, the Kev, or persona?
Yes. Well, the persona isn't that different to the real me, just a bit swearier and more controversial. So it all started. So, I'll start from the beginning, shall I?
Yeah, please.
So at school, I was not a very good student, but I was a voracious reader, and I'd always wanted to be a published author. And one of the few things I showed a talent for was creative writing. And I was also a very dedicated guitarist when I was a teenager. But of course, no competent careers advisor would tell you to gamble your future on making music or writing creatively. So I went in all kinds of strange directions. So in 2006, when I was 22, I finished an MA in creative writing. And there weren't that many options when it came to us. I realized early on that my two major ambitions in life, one was to be a creative and the other was to function in society. These two ambitions were in direct conflict with each other. So I had to find a compromise. And I've done things over the course of my 20s and 30s. Some were good for both ambitions. Some were bad for both ambitions, but most things helped one ambition or the other. So in my 20s, teaching myself Mandarin was definitely good for both ambitions. But I thought, so my thesis for this master's degree was a novelette called Beyond the Wings. And so I did submit it to publishers and collected enough rejection letters to decorate a stately home, as every aspiring author has to. But then I realized when it comes to actually commercially published fiction, it not only was it not in the same league as what appears on the shelves, it wasn't even the same sport. So I abandoned prose fiction for the foreseeable future in my 20s. And so by my mid-20s, I was living in a remote landlocked town in the middle of China, so in Hunan province. So Hunan is probably the equivalent of Arkansas or Oklahoma, so a flyover province. And I was one of the very few foreigners in this town. and just one of the very few forms of entertainment was karaoke. So most evenings I would go out, and I probably learned 2 new Mando pop songs a week on average. And as a study method that got out of hand, I started writing my own lyrics in Chinese and taking tunes I'd written as a teenager and putting them to Chinese lyrics. And when that hit a wall, when I realized that a Caucasian singing in Mandarin would never be taken seriously, and you would always just be seen as a sort of singing monkey. So eventually, to turn this weakness into a strength, I discovered musical comedy, and I realized. So as an undergraduate, our creative writing tutor, Archie Markham, said that good writing is characterized by 3 things: linguistic vitality, formal innovation, and emotional truth. And those 3 things, they're all quite abstract, and they're not things you can really quantify until after you've already finished something. But I found it was, with musical comedy, it was the first time I could apply all the knowledge I'd acquired over the years of creative writing, of music, of language, of poetry, philosophy, etc., but also genuinely connect to people. Because I would perform songs in grotty bars, and people would really dig them. So, and it's a case of Brendan O'Carroll from Mrs. Brown's Boys said, success is like disco music. Don't analyze it, just dance to it. So I leaned into it, and so over the years I've written so many comedy songs that when it comes to performing at Edinburgh, the only dilemma will be what material to leave out. And so as well as songs themselves, the biggest feature of my gigs is the between-song chit-chat, which the casual observer might think is just is off the cuff, but I actually script it to the last detail, but usually the best moments come off the cuff, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah. And so the kind of writing of the comic songs, the kind of beginning of musical comedy, started when you were still in China.
Yes, and because when you're living in an alien culture, the day-to-day experience is so peculiar that you just need. Whatever work you end up creating is going to be pretty peculiar. But I studied the craft of comedy fairly deeply, and I realized that for something to work, it has to have some kind of hook that the audience find recognizable. So, for example, with a comedy sketch, most comedy sketches start with something that the target audience can recognize, like a date or a job interview or a dinner party, and then they gradually veer into the absurd. And with these comedy songs, they tend to be very conventional in almost every way, especially the first verse, the first 30 seconds or so. And so you've built up an expectation for the audience, and then you steer them into the wacky.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the... I'm sure you'll forgive me for saying they're slightly uncomfortable.
Absolutely. So at Edinburgh Fringe, so my shows aren't on until the evening. So during the days, I'll have to go out and hand out flyers, and I'll be checking out other people's shows. And I'm very much someone who enjoys my own company and isn't a people person and gets overwhelmed easily. So I think I'll get information overload, if I may say. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to prepare 20 songs, and for each of those 20, I'll just a one-sentence witticism to introduce each one. But when I get on stage, I will only be able to play 10 or so because of time constraints. And when it comes to choosing which 10, I will just have to read the room and lean into whatever the atmosphere is.
Which I think is probably wisest at a Fringe festival, because the rooms can be so different, can't they? They can be so people come with such a varied audience, and people have very different kind of tastes and expectations, and so I think that's, I think reading the room is, it's difficult, but it's necessary.
Because on some nights there may be the entire front row might be elderly couples wearing suits and dressed for the theatre, or it might be a stag weekend or a night. So it's I think it's the old Eisenhower quote that plans are nothing, planning is everything.
Yes.
Because as soon as you're in the heat of battle, your plans go out the window, but it's still of the utmost importance that you have plans.
So what sort of things, for people maybe who've not seen you perform before, what sort of things, subject matter, might you be covering in these songs?
Well, at heart, I am a creative writer, and my biggest passion is literature. And so most of my heroes are the kinds of the names you see in libraries. So I like to, I'm a bit of a megalomaniac, and I like to explore every conceivable subject from every conceivable angle. So I like to take on the big subjects, like whether there is an afterlife, or whether there is life on other planets, or ancestors, and present day issues like masculinity, toxic masculinity, immigration or migration, because if you go back far enough in time, everybody except for the Aboriginal people of Australia is an immigrant or a descendant of immigrants. Like for example, so this past year, 2025, happens to have been a year where creatively everything just came together, and every song I wrote was a signature piece, and they all just flowed out, and I didn't seem to have to work that hard at them. But the previous year was a really slow year creatively, and I found that I really had to forage for ideas, and I filled notebook after notebook of scribblings and crossings out. So, for example, I really wanted to write a song about ancestors, because it's obviously mind-boggling to think of your parents had to meet, their parents had to meet, their parents had to meet, all the way back through the mists of time. So I wanted to take on that particular subject, but I had no idea how I was what angle I was gonna take, or how I was gonna make it entertaining for the audience. But I got there eventually.
It's interesting, isn't it? How, maybe not quite as dramatically as that, but I think we all have those periods of time where ideas just flow, or then they seem to dry up, or you said you had to forage for them, where you have to sort of put that extra bit of work into finding the ideas. Absolutely.
I think this year, well, I don't really need to write that much new material because I already have so much, but this year it's feeling like a slow one, because I've already written about so many subjects from so many angles. But that's just it's a pendulum. But I never, when it comes to anything creative, I never rush myself or give myself a deadline, because it will be like asking a pregnant woman to hurry up and pop out the baby.
Which, sometimes people do, but it's considered rude. So the show is going to be at Edinburgh, and it's going to be at the GM Fringe as well.
Yes.
Do you know venues yet?
Yes, so at the Greater Manchester Fringe, it will be at Gulliver's in the Northern Quarter on Thursday the 9th and Saturday the 11th of July. And the other day I checked and I found out that that clashes with the World Cup quarterfinals, but hopefully the World Cup quarterfinals I think will be later in the evening than that, so shouldn't be a problem. And in Edinburgh, it's August the 7th till 15th inclusive, and it is at Space UK, the theatre. So,
obviously you might not remember that, but I'm hoping that those will subliminally get lodged in your minds. I'm going to put some music on it, but we're going to remind you to check those dates out in July and August later in the show.